Public Interest Advocacy Centre, we're a community legal centre based in Sydney. We've been around since 1982. My team's the Energy and Water Consumer Advocacy Program team here. There's a few of us here today and tomorrow, so you can come and say hi. We represent the interest of New South Wales households with respect to their energy and water use. We've been doing that for about 20 years with funding from New South Wales Government. So I'm going to talk about how we can think about consumer impacts in relation to demand response and demand management in particular, how it fits into the sector. A lot of stuff you've already heard, so I won't reiterate that, but I'll do a bit of a focus on the wholesale energy market and some things that we think need to be improved to get more DR out of that. So our vision for households is that they have access to sustainable and affordable energy. And in a nutshell, we think that needs to be delivered through focusing on bringing the price of energy and people's bills down. We think that energy bills could be about 25% lower than they are now by 2025 in New South Wales. Happy to chat about how we think that can be done. We need to be on track for a low carbon energy system. Decarbonising the system is kind of not optional. We've got to make some serious commitments towards doing that. And we need a mature, shared, holistic plan and robust sort of scheme and plan to do that. And really importantly, we need the system to be secure, and a big focus of ours, because everyone's focusing on system security and reliability at the moment, is that we're not spending any more on that reliability than consumers are prepared to pay for. There's so much focus on reliability, there's a lot less focus at the moment on the counterbalancing point of, well, what are people actually prepared to pay? Now, demand response, and if this looks familiar, it's the trilemma, right? We've all seen it trotted out in a few different contexts. Demand response is uniquely able to help address all three areas of this trilemma. It helps deal with the affordability issue because it's a cheaper way of doing stuff. The reason we do demand response throughout the sector is because it's cheaper than doing the other ways of doing it. So if you're doing it right, it can't not help with affordability. It also, for the people who are participating, helps to give them even more of a benefit there with affordability. Demand response usually doesn't directly reduce emissions, but it helps us to leverage all the other tools it can, like variable renewable energy generation and so on. And demand response can play a key role in reliability as well, not just by being a cheap, cost-effective tool that's available to help us with that security, but also by allowing people to, if you like, self-select their levels of reliability. We kind of have a hyper-reliable energy system as it is, and if someone wants to say, okay, well, I can afford to use a bit less during the hot time by using less energy here or there, why shouldn't they have the opportunity to do so? In terms of consumer impacts, you'll hear a lot today and yesterday about how people think about consumer impacts and the different typologies of consumers and so on. The approach that we take to considering consumer impacts is quite an outcomes-based one. And we think about these two factors of engagement and disadvantage, or advantage being the opposite to that. And we don't see them as being on one spectrum with your disadvantaged, disengaged consumers up one end and your geeks with money up the other. We actually see that there's a mix in the consumer space. And so the lens that we look through all of the reforms that we seek takes this into account. We consider that there are advantaged, if you like, engaged consumers. These are the ones who are currently getting a pretty good deal in the energy market because they can shop around for an energy deal and they can pay their bills on time to get their discount, and they can put solar panels on their roof, they own their house. They're getting a good deal, taking advantage of the market. Unfortunately, the other groups, for different reasons, aren't. You've got your disadvantaged, disengaged consumers in particular who are doing it tough and don't have those options to engage. But you've also got disadvantaged, engaged consumers, and a big focus for us is actually on how we make the things that we're doing work for them to deliver them benefits. And demand response options really can provide a better outcome for all of these groups through giving more things for the engaged consumers to do to help them manage their cost, but by simply reducing the cost of energy from the grid for all others. Now, the detail on this, I don't need to talk to because luckily it's been covered by other panellists, but we see there being 5 or 6, if you like, main areas in the sector where demand response can offer benefit. Transmission, distribution. In the wholesale space, which we would actually separate into the wholesale generation and your supporting stuff for security and so on, in the retail space and also the behind the meter, if you like, what customers do on their own side. There's obviously a lot of overlap between these. They're far from mutually exclusive. But our strongest point around this is that any of these categories and any part of the system that does not have an optimized level of demand response in it can't be considered efficient. And it can't until we get to the point where it is. If we have less than an optimal amount of demand response in distribution or in the wholesale market or in transmission or in the retail space, we just simply can't say that our system is fully efficient, because an optimal level of demand response is reflected by us choosing to have the cheapest ways possible of supplying the energy that we need. Now, there are a whole lot of reforms in train and existing reforms in this space that have led to improvements in the opportunities for demand response, particularly in relation to networks and in relation to the security and reliability side of the wholesale market. And in the wholesale market, we've got things like 5-minute settlement, which should start to give way to and unlock more of those opportunities. But it's not a new thing or a new idea. Demand response has been flagged in the wholesale market for some time. PERA Review 2002, quite a long time ago, first said, hey, we need a mechanism to make this happen. This was echoed by the AEMC with their Power of Choice review in 2012. And proposals to actually develop a demand response mechanism came out of that. And for many reasons I won't go into, because we only have an 8-minute presentation, not an 80-minute one, that's kind of stalled. To where we are today, though. So these are some sneak peek results from a survey that we've done of retail innovation in New South Wales. Each row represents a retailer. We spoke to a couple of dozen retailers, and this was if you like, a cold calling, mystery shopping sort of exercise, where we got people to call up a retailer and say, hi, I'm a customer, I'd like this innovative product or that innovative product. And the results were quite interesting. I'll start with some, goodish news. The green circle that you see there, that represents responses to feed-in tariffs. Now, the solid numbers there, the solid dots, if you like, show retailers being prepared to pay more than the minimum recommended amount by IPART for feed-in tariffs. That's cool. That says that they're recognising the wholesale value of people's solar energy from the system by offering them something for it. To the blue circle that's to the left of that, I guess that's what I think Rosemary Sinclair would describe that as green shoots. That's retailers offering a bit of innovative pricing, a bit of stuff that consumers can use to access data. Not all retailers are doing it, but clearly there's a bit of consumer choice there, so that if a consumer really wants those services, they can choose a retailer who can start to offer them. Rather tellingly and concerningly, though, if we have a look at the red circle, that reflects how many retailers are offering consumers demand response products. As in, when you call up as a consumer and say, I'd like a demand response product, please, that's how many retailers offer them. The full circle means a consumer has actually offered it. A retailer has actually offered that to the customer. The hollow circles mean they have websites that say they offer them, but when you call up, there's actually no sign, you can't get through. The response from most retailers when they were called, we asked them in all sorts of different ways, because of course you speak to someone in a call centre and they're like, what's a demand response? You have to have that conversation. So we did give the retailers the benefit of the doubt by having approaching that in a few different ways. The most common response when we asked for a demand response product was, we can give you a discount of 38% on your energy bill or something like that. But I think categorically we can say that's the consumer experience in Sydney when calling up to ask for a demand response product with retailer. In other words, 99.99 something % of consumers would have to change retailer today in Sydney just to get a demand response product. And consumers don't necessarily want to shop around for the one thing in the one place all the time. If they have to go to a retailer, and a particular one, to get that product because they want it, it's a bit like them only being able to go to one supermarket to get all their groceries, right? They might want to get their cheapest, most cost-effective energy retail from one retailer and do demand response with someone else. Incidentally, just as a bit of a side note, there's between the blue and the green lines there, you'll see I've put a bit of an exclamation mark up the top. And this could be something that connects a bit with the demand response issue. This is the retailer response when you ask them for a new meter. Now, we have contestable metering at the moment, so all retailers, as of December last year and even earlier in New South Wales, should be offering customers meters when they ask them up, when a customer calls up and asks them. Now, the most common response that we actually had from retailers when we asked them for a meter was no. The second most common response was, oh, you'll have to call your distributor about that, which is a bit concerning. The third most common response was, yes, we can give you one, but that was about a quarter of retailers, but half of them couldn't commit to doing it in the next 6 months. So it doesn't look like that particular innovative angle is being offered as much as we'd sort of hoped and expected. Bearing that in mind, what do we really need to do to unlock demand response in the wholesale market, right? Thank you. Is that my 6-minute warning or 10? Okay, all right. We would argue we need to actually have some third-party aggregation allowed. Don't just let it be the domain of retailers. We need to take the distortion out of the market at the moment. And level the playing field. Currently, when I say it's a distorted, unlevel market, you can aggregate generators in the market through a small generator aggregator arrangement, but you can't aggregate demand response unless you're a retailer. It's a bit of an obscurity. We need to be able to access the full supply chain, and aggregators would be in the best position to do that. Remember those different parts of the market that we said? Being independent of all of them would give them the adaptability to be able to go to that. It would allow real consumer choice and confidence. We hear that a lot of people want to do demand response, but they don't necessarily want to do it with retailers. So I should have issued the retailer bashing trigger alert at the start of this presentation, but this is what we're hearing from consumers, right? It allows demand response to be offered by those who are best equipped to do it, and retailers to focus on what they do well. Why make retailers do something that they don't necessarily want to do when someone else does want to offer that? Is the proposition we would use. And having a demand response mechanism wouldn't stop retailers from doing demand response. In fact, it could work much like it did in the ancillary services market, where introducing that bit of competition actually opened up a whole lot of cheaper ways to do things. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.